Well, good morning, everyone. As Kim said, we're getting folks a chance to get their computers up and running, but I think we're all experts at that at this point. My name is Hart Nelson. I am the chair of Citizens for Modern Transit, and I want to thank all of you for joining us this morning to our quarterly Talking Transit event, of course. Today, we're going to be discussing the trajectory of transit in 2022. So where are we headed? What does it look like? And that question that we get asked a lot, of course, when will it all get underway? First, I want to thank all of CMT's board members who have joined us this morning. I'd also like to thank CMT's Platinum and Gold sponsors, including AARP in St. Louis, Bi-State Development, BJC Healthcare, Greater St. Louis Incorporated, Missouri and Kansas Laborers District Council, St. Clair County Transit District, Gonzalez Companies, Ulico, and Washington University in St. Louis. We obviously would not be able to provide these updates without their generous support. So thank you. Again, I want to thank everyone who has joined us this morning. It's really great to see such wide interest in this topic. And now, as usual, I'm going to turn it over to Kim Sella, the Executive Director of Citizens for Modern Transit, to get us started.
Thank you, Hart. And thank you everyone for joining us again. We are really excited about the call today to hear updates on various transit projects in the St. Louis region that are either currently underway, including light rail expansion to Mid-America Airport, the expanded North Side South Side study, and the Brickline Greenway's integration with transit. Our panel today includes Patrick Judge, who is a principal with Gonzalez Companies and the project manager for the Illinois Light Rail Project. We also have with us today Jennifer Obertino, Jennifer, the Senior Vice President with AECOM, and she is leading the North Side study, as well as welcoming Mark Vogel, the project manager planning for Great Rivers Greenway, and he is the lead on the Brickline Greenway. We're going to talk about the future of transit all the time at Citizens for Modern Transit. However, today we are going to look at an opportunity to hear from our partners on the ground who are actually bringing that future of transit to fruition right now. Now, let's start by allowing our panelists to provide a quick overview of each of their projects that they have, including size, scope, and time frame. We will then open it up to questions. As a reminder, when we do these Talking Transit every time, please make sure to put your questions in the Q&A box or the chat box. We will get to them as quickly as possible. We want to make sure we answer as many questions this morning as possible, but please leave your questions to the end. We will get to them, place them in the chat box, and we're going to go ahead and get started with Pat Judge and Illinois Light Rail. Welcome, Pat.
Hi, Kim. Thank you for the introduction. And again, thank you for the opportunity to speak here today. Let's see, Kim, can you see my screen? Are we good?
I can. We are good. Great. Thank you.
So I'm going to spend a few minutes here today just giving some high-level information about our project here in Sinclair County, Illinois. So as many people may not realize, we are actually going to break ground this year for construction of a light rail extension for Metrolink. I'm going to get out of this presentation and spend just a minute talking about where we're at on the project. And this particular slide gives the overall map of the Metrolink system from top left up here in Lambert Airport through Clayton over here, the left of my screen. And then, of course, the St. Clair County Extension in red that wrapped up in the early 2000s. The piece I'm talking about today is this purple piece over here. It's a little over 5 miles on the bottom right-hand side of the screen in St. Clair County, located in the vicinity of Scott Air Force Base and Mid-America Airport. So it's important to talk about the stakeholders in this particular project. The project is being funded through a $96 million Rebuild Illinois grant that was issued by the governor of Illinois. And it's being administered through the Illinois Department of Transportation. Obviously, St. Clair County Transit District is the lead agency on this project, and they've been great to work with so far. The elected officials of St. Clair County, a big part of this project, as well as Mid-America Airport. Of course, the county controls the airport, but Brian Johnson's been great to work with at the airport. The other stakeholders on this project, Bi-State Development Agency, or Metro, because essentially they will take over this project. We are building this project for them to take over, own, and operate in the future. And as Kim mentioned, our company, Gonzalez Companies, is a project management oversight during design, managing the design process, and then we are also the lead construction management company on the project as we move forward through construction. Just to give you an idea of how we're set up, the transit district is front and center there. They are the owner, they are the client. Bi-State Development Agency is off to the right there with dotted lines. They have been a good partner through this project so far, and they are integrally involved on a week-to-week basis. Again, they will ultimately own and operate the train system. So WSP, bottom left of the screen, is a design team. They have probably a dozen local consultants on the project team. And then again, we're Gonzalez, and we're providing the oversight during design as well as CM services. The general description of the project, it includes 5.2 miles of Metrolink, 2.5 or 2.6 miles of double track alignment, 2.6 miles of single track alignment. It's going to include a new passenger station at the end of the line at Mid-America Airport. If funding allows, it will also include extension of a bike trail, and I'll show this to you here in a few minutes with some exhibits, extension of Reeder Road, and a new access roadway, which is essentially an outer road for the airport. So just to step back 20 years in time, this project was originally designed in 1999 as part of the original Sinclair County extension. However, funding was not available, so the project was put on the shelf, and until a few years ago, when money became available, this project was dormant. So the red line here is the original alignment of this Metrolink extension. You can see Scott Air Force Base in the bottom left here. That is where the current Metrolink alignment stops. And you can see Mid-America Airport over on the right-hand side of the screen. You'll notice two things about the original alignment. First of all, at the top of the screen, the red line hugs the interstate. And the reason why they did that was to get away from the runways of Scott Air Force Base. On the bottom right-hand side of the screen, you'll notice back then that they were actually building the train right up to the front door of the Mid-America Airport. Those two things have changed in the last 20 years for good reason. First of all, there's been a tremendous amount of development in the area. And when you look at this red line alignment out here, hugging the interstate above Wary Road, you'll notice it cuts across some prime real estate, right? And so what you'll see on the next slide here, and of course we deal with the wetlands, which we'll talk about later. The current alignment is the yellow line on the screen, and we've dropped it down below Wary Road. The purpose of that is to free up and open up development property above the Metrolink, between the Metrolink and Interstate 64, right? So we've been able to drop that alignment down, open up development opportunities for the county. We also eliminated an at-grade crossing, which is a big deal from a safety perspective by doing that. Furthermore, on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see that we have moved the Metrolink station, passenger station, out to the edge of the parking lot. That was at the request of the airport, because essentially by having the Metrolink right up at their front door, it really put some parameters and constraints on the airport in terms of all the development. So there will be a path between the airport front door and the Metrolink platform out there. As I mentioned, a bike trail, if budget allows, will be included in this project. And that's the blue dashed line along the alignment here. It's hard to see here, and I'll pop out of the screen here, but the access road that I mentioned is a key part of this project. So as it stands today, if you're along Interstate 64, if you want to get to the airport over here, you have to come all the way over to Illinois Route 4, drop down and backtrack. This project will also include a new outer road here, which will essentially connect the Reeder Road interchange to the airport. So that is a high level alignment of what we're building out here. Some of the challenges that we face, I mean, when you look at this on paper, it looks like we're building a train through a farm field. There are a lot of things going on out here. We have runway clear zones to deal with, especially since we moved the alignment and tightened up the alignment away from 64. Accident potential zones. We have the various roadways, local roads, county roads that are out here that we're dealing with. We're also dealing with the runway protection zone for Mid-America Airport. Finally, we have blue line creeks, wetland creeks, or wetland areas that we have to deal with. We have endangered species, right? So we have to be good stewards of the land, and we have to make sure that we produce this product or project in a way that we don't harm the various species and habitat out there in the Silver Creek area. Other constraints, we have cultural sites, right? So Native American sites that, again, we have to be good stewards of the land, and we have to make sure that we don't do anything there to harm those cultural sites. So again, 5.5 miles, approximately 5.2 miles is the entire project here. Pushing through here, some other challenges that we are dealing with. We're working with Ameren. We have a major gas transmission line in the area, which just so happens to run right down the middle of our proposed alignment for Metrolink. So that's a big deal. Ameren's been really good to work with so far, and in a manner that we can move that gas transmission line out of our way so that it doesn't delay our project. Other challenges that we're dealing with beyond the ones that I've already mentioned, we have a lot of overhead electric lines to deal with out there. So this particular slide just shows some various options that we are considering as it relates to relocating the overhead electric so that we don't have conflicts with our, not only our train, but also the new access road that we're building. Other project challenges, we had mentioned Scott Air Force Base previously. So this particular slide shows that we have to deal with the Cardinal Creek Gate. So currently Scott Air Force Base opens up the Cardinal Creek Gate in the morning rush hour and the evening rush hour. So in order to not interrupt their services, we have to stage our Metrolink to provide continuous access during those morning and evening rush hours. So that's what this slide represents here. Project schedule overview. Design commenced in October of 20 and is going to continue through August of 2022. We're going to start bidding this project out in multiple contracts. I'll explain that in a second, beginning in May. And we're going to continue to bid various contracts out through February of 2024. Construction, as I mentioned earlier, will break ground this year, run through spring of 2025. Testing and startup phase, which will be led by Bi-State or Metro. Once we finish construction, they will begin testing the train and running various scenarios to make sure we have a safe operating train. That'll occur in December of 24. Start of revenue service for this extension is spring of 2025. I mentioned previously that we are separating this overall project into different bid packages. The purpose of that is simple. If we bid this out in one project, we would have a national construction company come in here and take this job. What we really want is to provide economic opportunities for local and regional contractors, right? So by separating this project out into 7 bid packages, we're separating it out into packages that local and regional contractors can bid on as prime contractors. And so this is the details of where we're at. We're currently between 60 and 90% on design of the overall project. Current major activities before I wrap up here. Environmental permitting is a big deal on this project, and that is going well so far, as well as cultural resources, geotechnical borings, getting geotechnical borings in the wetland areas. We anticipate some unsuitable material out there that we'll have to deal with in construction. We are in the process of purchasing wetland bank credits, right? For this particular project, we're coordinating on a regular basis with the Army Corps of Engineers for permitting. We're coordinating with IDOT District 8 in Collinsville, as well as Sinclair County Highway Department. We have ongoing coordination with Scott Air Force Base, Mid-America Airport, as I mentioned previously, Ameren. And then we are also coordinating on a regular basis with IDOT Transit out of Springfield, which again is administering the funding for this particular project. So, and we are hot and heavy into design submittals and reviews as we speak. So that is the quick 8 or 9 minute overview of the project for everyone. Happy to answer questions later on as they come up.
Thank you, Pat. Exciting to see that potential groundbreaking is set for August of this year. So thank you for that update. And we do have some questions for you, but we'll save them till after we get to all of our speakers. I was remiss. I do want to recognize Jim Wild, the Executive Director of East West Gateway, has joined us graciously, I should say, joined us today to answer any of the money questions when we get to the Q&A portion. So thank you, Jim, for joining us, as well as Ken Sharkey, the Managing Director of the St. Clair County District, who is sponsoring this extension of the Illinois Light Rail project. So next up, we have Mark Vogel, and Mark is going to be talking to us this morning about the Brickline Project, which is the Greenway project for GRG that will link into public transit. So welcome, Mark.
Thank you, Kim. If you can give me a thumbs up when you see my presentation. All right, great. And I want to thank Pat for sharing a great presentation. We're excited about that project, and I'm personally excited to see a bike ped facility possibly being included in that. So as Kim said, I want to talk a little bit about the Brickline Greenway. First, some background on our organization, Great Rivers Greenway. We're a public agency that was created in the year 2000 in St. Louis City, St. Louis County, St. Charles County to develop this network of greenways around the St. Louis region. And so what is a greenway? The first thing that comes to mind for people is that it's a trail. And that is certainly one component of it, but we also get involved in conservation projects. We like to include as many amenities as possible. And ultimately, the Greenway is about making connections throughout the St. Louis region that people can enjoy and add value to their neighborhoods, their lives. And what they look like is very unique to the neighborhoods and the communities in which they exist. And for those of you who are familiar with Great Rivers Greenway's projects, you probably know some of these, and they have a variety of different amenities. Some of them are more neighborhood oriented in urban locations. Some of them are more naturally oriented. But again, they're very unique to the conditions where they exist. We spent a lot of time on civic engagement to make sure that we're delivering what people want to see in their own communities. And as I mentioned, we're developing these greenways across the entire region. We're currently building and planning and designing in 16 different corridors. And we have 128 miles completed to date, and more under construction right now, and hopefully delivering more and more miles every year as we go forward. But we also like to remind people that greenways are not just about recreation. We feel very strongly that greenways are also part of our commuting and transportation infrastructure in the St. Louis region. And as such, we believe that we're building a regional system with local connections, providing transportation options to people of all abilities that would create sustainable communities. And ultimately, we believe that this is a catalyst for economic development. That's really the heart of what transit-oriented development is. But we also think that it's not just transit-oriented development, it's transit and trail-oriented development. And what can be better than TOD? It's when transit and trails are combined and serve each other. And we know that this is true because we have studied it. And recently, as part of the Brickline Greenway, we had an economic development group analyze impacts of greenways around the country. And they have documented proof, very strong evidence that greenways are a catalyst for economic development. And it follows that the closer you get to a greenway, the greater potential impact you can have. But we're looking at about a quarter mile to half mile area of influence around the Brickline Greenway as that zone of having the greatest impact. And we have seen this from around the country, from very notable projects like the Rose Kennedy Greenway and Highline in Boston and New York, but also communities that are more similar to St. Louis, like the Indianapolis Cultural Trail, or the Atlanta Beltline, where these urban greenways are having huge returns on public investment. And we think that these are great models that we can demonstrate for future impact that the Brickline Greenway will have in the St. Louis area. It's also, I think, very important that we have the same set of goals as Metro, as they build the light rail system and operate it. We're serving very similar types of communities, people who either have by choice or by need, can't have a car or choose not to use a car. And we believe that we're creating that first and last mile destination that is very complementary to the light rail system and also the bus system as well. And I want to point out that Bi-State has been a fantastic partner. We have a number of different greenways, 7 different corridors right now that we either have direct connections to transit or we're planning and building them in the future. In the very heart of the region here, sort of hazed in green on this slide, is the Brickline Greenway. It's very different from other projects that we have under development around the region because it's not just a point A to point B connecting one destination to another. It's really a network within a network with parallel routes and lines. And if you've seen this graphic, this is really the ultimate vision for what the Brickline Greenway can be. Going east and west, it's a set of corridors that connects Forest Park to the Gateway Arch, and going north and south connects Fairground Park to Tower Grove. And so it really, east and west connects to a lot of the job and entertainment and cultural centers in the region. Going north and south, it connects to some wonderful neighborhoods. And so, it's really a project that has a great appeal for lots of different people with lots of different destinations. And the Brickline Greenway is not the only component here. We have partner projects like the 20th Street Cycle Track and the Tower Grove Connector, and other GRG projects, Mississippi Greenway, the Greenway of the Hodemont Tracks, St. Vincent Greenway, Centennial, and River to Pear. Again, this is a network of greenways. It's not just a single line on the map. And so the reach and the potential for serving a great number of people, a huge population, a lot of different neighborhoods, we think is really, really significant. And of course, its connection to Metrolink is ultimately a huge game changer. And with the original red line and the blue line, every one of the stations that are shown on this map has at least a quarter mile or a half mile connection to one of the greenways that I just mentioned. And we just think that is such an important aspect to the future success of our project, but also enabling people to access Metrolink in a much more convenient and easy way. And we think that the potential for the North Side, South Side Metrolink as well can also have similar impacts. But I want to talk about a few projects that we have underway. The first one that I want to highlight that Kim knows very, very well, and thank you for Metro and Cortex and other partners, was the development of the Cortex Metrolink station that opened a few years ago. This was funded locally with some local dollars, including some match from Greenway Greenway, but also a $10 million Tiger grant that we got from the federal government. This was our ribbon cutting. And I want to point out that this is a project, another partner project between GRG and Metro, where the entire station and the Greenway, this first leg of what at the time was Shoto Greenway, now Brickline, was designed hand in hand. And so all the facilities, including the location for the ticket vending machines, also housing bicycle and scooter in a covered area. It was all designed collaboratively to make sure that the user experience was just as good for the transit users as the trail users, because we think that they're the same people in many locations. Also picking up on the branding that already occurs within the Cortex community, everything from the benches to the lights, the branding of the pylon signs. And I mentioned lights. This was a really important part of this project, was to make sure that the Greenway was lit at all hours that we would have users of the transit facility. And so typically when you see GRG trails around the region, they're not lit. The trails are typically open during daylight hours, but as we move into more urban situations where people are using the greenways for commuting, we believe very strongly that they're going to be using it early morning and into the evening. And also at times like when there's Cardinals and Blues games going on as well. So another project that we're very, very excited about, we were just awarded a $4 million CMAQ grant. that will build a Greenway connection extending from the Cortex station 3/4 of a mile east to the Grand Station. And this is occurring right within the Metro right-of-way. We have a license agreement in place with Bi-State that will enable us to do this. We're currently working on our 30% drawings. Those are due to be delivered to GRG in about another month or so. But we have some, oops, I have not been advancing my slides. I want to make sure you're all seeing these. These are the ticket vending and bicycle parking I mentioned, the branding opportunities at the Cortex station, and of course, the lighting along the trail. I apologize for not advancing the slides. So again, this $4 million CMAQ project between Cortex and Grand is going to extend the existing Brickline Greenway that is currently exists between Boyle and Sarah. And so we'll be going 3/4 of a mile to the Grand Station along the light rail tracks. So we got some nice imagery. These are sort of what if scenarios where we're using some of the underutilized land along the tracks and making it a more inviting and welcoming place. Again, high priority on pedestrian access, making it much more inviting, improving the quality of the environment. This is at Vanavetter looking to the northeast. So the Foundry development is in the distance here. Down below is Vanavetter Avenue, an existing former freight rail that we want to re-envision as a elevated section of the Greenway that will take you into the Foundry, and then a ramp down below the I-64 overpass that will bring you down to Vanavetter. And then as you come into the Foundry development, this elevated section will come right into the heart of the new development. So the existing Foundry food hall is over here on the left, and some of the new offices, actually GRG's office is right here on the right-hand side. Alamo Draft House is here in the background, and further in the background is the new mixed-use project that the Lawrence Group is getting ready to break ground on. In fact, this week they've just broken ground on a 14-story residential tower and mixed-use office. And then moving further to the east, again along the light rail tracks on the right-hand side, Ameren Substation, again making this a much more inviting environment for pedestrian and bicycle users. Certainly using fencing for pedestrian safety, but just making it a much more pleasant experience as you move between the two stations. And then similar to how we designed the Cortex station hand in hand with Metro, we're looking at doing some enhancements to the environment around the Metrolink station at Grand. Again, we think that the user groups are very similar. In a lot of cases, we're using the Greenway to access the station and vice versa. And again, make this a much more attractive location. And so transit-oriented development, trail-oriented development, we think that this is, the Cortex station is a great example of how we're doing this in the region right now. A great shot that shows the aerial view of the Greenway along the north side of the tracks and the Metrolink station right here at Cortex. But there are some elements that are very important to make transit-oriented and trail-oriented development successful. The first one is you need the infrastructure. Transit and trail, we have to have a way of moving people around. And so that's the first component that is pretty obvious, but it's very necessary. We also think that the density is really important. And as you see these projects come out of the ground, they are compact, they're mixed use, they have a variety of uses that occur throughout the day and the evening, and that they're walkable. We like to say that at some point, every transit user becomes a pedestrian. And those pedestrians and those bicyclists, they have the opportunity to jump on the trail, jump on the Greenway, and expand how far that they can go. And we want these spaces to be accessible, convenient, comfortable, welcoming, and inclusive. And there also has to be demand. And this is why you haven't seen some of these projects take root in St. Louis yet, is because we're a slow growth region. But in certain locations, certainly right here at Cortex, the conditions are right and they're growing. And we have a lot of user enthusiasm for making sure these projects are successful and people occupying them. And ultimately creating connectivity. These are networks. These are not single projects. These have to function as an integral network, provide that first and last mile, provide micro transit and micro mobility. And I'm excited about the design of some of the projects that we're seeing come online. They do offer all these elements. They're walkable, they're pedestrian oriented, they have mixed use. And I think they're very attractive. I think that this is going to be a game changer for St. Louis. And as the locations around the Cortex and Grand Stations continue to become more popular, I think that TOD is going to expand in the St. Louis region in a way that we've been talking about and envisioning for many, many years. And it's finally coming to fruition. And so finally, I want to end on another project award that we just received. We received a raise grant for $15 million for northern section of Brickline Greenway along Grand Avenue from the Grand Station south to Page. And I'm not going to talk about the design for this. We're still just getting started on this project, but if and when the North Side Metrolink comes in here, we hope that this is a project that can again have that trail and transit oriented development opportunities to again reinvest in some of these North Side neighborhoods the same way that we're doing in Cortex. So with that, I will stop sharing and turn it back over to Kim and look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mark. I think the presentation is super exciting to see movement on the trails and the greenways to transit and that connection. I love some of Mark's comments about partnerships and collaboration and the networks that we're creating. And I think that's really important as we move forward. And you ended on a perfect note, the North Side. So now we have with us Jennifer Obertino with AECom, and Jennifer is the project manager for the expanded North Side South Side study that will be getting underway shortly. So welcome, Jennifer. We can't wait to hear what you have to tell us about the future of transit in the North Side South Side corridor.
Well, thank you, Kim. And while the presentation is being brought up, I'm actually the project director of the project. So I've got a phenomenal team, and Julia Suprak is our project manager for this fantastic, noteworthy regional collaboration project that I just feel like the region should get a gold star for our leadership coming together and really bringing the city and the county together. So if you would like to, and forgive me, I'm not usually on Zoom, so we use a different platform. So if you could advance to the next slide. Unfortunately, I don't have this developed out as much as Mark or Pat because we are just in the very beginning of the project itself. We are under contract with the city of St. Louis. We are still negotiating with St. Louis County on what our actual scope is. What we're looking at is a alternatives analysis for the North Side, South Side study that was performed in 2018, which built upon the investment that was made in 2008. So again, we're looking at further developing so that we can improve accessibility, improve the opportunity for development, and hopefully be in line for some funding. We anticipate that this project will take about 15 months. So Kim, of course, we would love to be able to come back and give an update on more of where we're at. If we want to go to the next slide, we'll just give an overview for those of you who are not familiar necessarily with where the corridors are. These are actually pulled from the 2018 study. Because that's the basis of it. And like I said, we have not quite gotten started. So we're looking at the connection of basically Goodfellow to Bayless on the north side of the city, and then going down 55 and down to Broadway on the south side. And if we want, and you'll see that there's an insert of the city. If we'll go to the next slide, really, we feel like there is tremendous opportunity to really think about, what it looks like downtown. There's been so much change. There's been so much opportunity and development in downtown, even from 2018, that really looking at where, what the possibilities are here. And I should caveat that we are looking at both light rail and bus rapid transit for both the city and the county. So it's not just light rail. And so again, really thinking about what these opportunities are, how we can be a catalyst for connectivity and mobility into downtown to really help revitalize and support all of the development and money that has been invested in the city. If we want to go to the next slide, this talks about just what we're looking at for the county. And again, we're still in negotiations on what exactly the county is looking for. Again, it's really looking at both the connection for North County into the city and out of the city and really that taking advantage of the opportunity for development that is in North County. Again, same thing for South County. We just have seen, the tremendous opportunity for that development in North County. So working and looking at both light rail and bus rapid transit. So how are we going to approach this? If we want to go to the next slide, how are we going to approach this? We've got to take a look at, what was done in 2018. Obviously, our demographics have changed. The COVID, the impacts on ridership, and how people are thinking about utilizing transit. We've had different sales tax projections, technology, our ability for utilizing light rail or bus rapid transit has changed significantly. And then, of course, the county's participation, which again is just phenomenal that we've been able to bring the region together. And I should note that obviously bi-state is critical in this project and really helping with the leadership and advancing this. And so we'll do a comparison, and we'll look at what that investment is, what are the investments and the benefits of either bus rapid transit, light rail, a combination, the ridership, the projections, so that we can align the region to be best suited for potential federal funding. If we go to the next slide, of course, the critical part of this is engagement with our stakeholders, with the communities, to really get an understanding of what their needs are, what their thoughts are, goes hand in hand with what Mark has talked about as far as that really building the network out with Great Rivers Greenway. And obviously being very conscientious of just with COVID or other potential, I don't want to say pandemics, but, just being thoughtful for that in the future. So if we can go to the next slide, why are we doing this? Why is the timeline so critical? Well, there's the IIJA, right? The federal funding, the potential for funding that is available now and in the future. And so we've got to advance the study and understand what is the best benefit and the best opportunity for federal funding within the region so that we can be a successful candidate. And if we want to go to the next slide, and this is my last slide, and that way we can open it up to questions. But if we go to the next slide, this just shows or illustrates the funding that is available compared to in the past. And so this is what is so very critical as far as with transit and what we're seeing in the IIJA, or the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. Now, again, the blue on top is not guaranteed, but it's accessible. It's available as compared to in the past. And so that's why it's so critical that we are moving forward, looking at this as a community and as a region to improve the mobility for all and for the accessibility for all. And I shouldn't just say that this is a city of St. Louis County sponsored project, but it also allows the connectivity all the way back, Pat, to Mid-America once we get that built too, right? So it's really connecting the overall region. So with that, Kim, I know it was pretty quick, but I wanted to make sure that we have opportunity for questions. And, like I said, we are, thrilled to be leading this charge for the city and county and by state. And would love to come back and provide more details as we're progressing with this analysis.
Thank you, Jennifer. And you are most welcome to come back at any time with updates or even mid-process to talk about where you're at. This is really exciting for the advocacy organization with regards to the fact that this is now a regional project, including both the city and the county versus some of the conversations that have happened in the past. So we welcome you to come at any time to talk about the North Side, South Side project. We're now going to open it up for questions for our panel, as well as Jim Wild, the Executive Director of East West Gateway. If we get into some of those funding questions that are hanging out there, and Jennifer did touch on it a little, the new infrastructure bill is really part of the opportunity hanging out there with regards to North Side, South Side, and other projects in the St. Louis region. So let's start. I have one question. It goes right back to you, Jennifer. With regards to the North Side, South Side study, why do you believe pivoting to a regional project will help lead to the success of this initiative?
Because it allows for a larger community, a larger base to have access to the region. And so it builds the potential for ridership. It builds the potential for us to give access and mobility to areas that may be economically depressed or may not have that opportunity for other modes of transportation.
And there was an add-on to that. How does that impact the scoring of this project as well, potentially?
So it certainly impacts that. It also, it's a cost benefit ratio that is looked at as far as ridership and that return on investment. And so if there are areas that we can touch that are more economically depressed, that don't have as much accessibility, that certainly helps us in that ability to receive more federal funding. But the other aspect of it is it helps the community. It helps the community, bringing the community together. And it also encourages more development and more investment outside of the federal funding, which is so critical for the region.
Thank you. Okay, next question. Regarding the Metrolink extension to Mid-America Airport, so Pat, you're up. What is the anticipated maximum speed for trains? For what % of the new right-of-way will trains be moving at that speed? And what would be the minimum time between trains given a one-track only portion of the right-of-way?
Sure, good questions. So let me get back to that here in a few minutes. I don't know that I'll have all the answers as it relates to time between trains at this point. But let me get back to that. What I'd like to cover, if it's all right with you, Kim, is a couple of the other questions that are on here.
Sure.
So one question in particular was, when will the groundbreaking start for the Metrolink extension? And notice to proceeds are going out, are anticipated for August of this year. Construction will be completed by the end of 2024, but revenue service will start in spring of 2025. So there's that testing and startup period that has to occur with state safety oversight, basically. And they run various drills, in braking drills and various other drills that are required in order to make sure the system is safe. And that takes a few months to get through that process. Brandon Canoy, I believe, had another question regarding the at-grade crossing. I had mentioned during my presentation that the at-grade crossing at Wary Road was eliminated with our new alignment. But what I did fail to mention is that the Metrolink extension will actually run underneath Reeder Road. So when we extend Reeder Road to the south, Reeder Road will be over the Metrolink. So there will not be an at-grade crossing at that particular location. So those are two questions. And then if I can, I'll come back to the other question here in a minute.
Okay, great. So Mark, we have one for you. You discussed a little bit about the Brickline and your other projects. What do you believe will be the impacts on transit ridership? You know, COVID has had a significant impact on ridership within the region. What do you think some of these projects will do for transit? And there's also, what does that connection really look like at the Grand and Metrolink station and the Grand bus stops up on the Grand Avenue Bridge? Those are critical questions that we have since we've just done the ULI TAP report of that area.
Yeah, and thank you for hosting that TAP report. I think it's a really important project, obviously, because of the number of transit users that use the Grand Corridor. So the first part of the question about the impact on transit that the greenways may have and vice versa. I mentioned that GRG and Metro have very, very similar goals in providing accessibility and giving people alternatives to being in a car, again, whether it's by need or by choice. We actually have electronic counters in different greenways around the region. And what we see is that in some locations, I'll use Gravois Greenway or Grants Trail as an example. We see this very classic, when the weather's nice, rider or usership goes way, way up. Saturday afternoons, Sunday afternoons in the springtime, lots of users. So we know there's a pattern of recreational use on some of our greenways. Where we have connections to light rail and to some of the more popular bus lines, we see really strong patterns Monday through Friday, morning and evening commuting uses. And so we know that there are greenway users that use the greenway as for commuting, as a transit option, as a connection to the bus and light rail network. And so as we provide more and more connections, it exponentially opens up how many different destinations there will be for both users of the greenway and transit to use both facilities. And again, try to work with Metro. And again, they've been wonderful. I think they recognize that we do share a user group. And so as much as we can make these facilities inviting and welcoming to both, it's going to continue to offer people those opportunities. And then as far as transit and development, those are more destinations. Those are more residents, more employees, more students who have more destinations that they conveniently go to without needing to be in a car. So yeah, we're very, very optimistic that the more we build these facilities and the more the private sector invests in them, the greater the impact will be on usership. And then the second part of the question about Grand Avenue or the Grand Station. Right now there's been a lot of investment. The station is much more attractive than it was when the system first opened, both for users of light rail down at the ground level as well as the bus users up above. But we think that with the Greenway project and some of the proposed transit-oriented development, mixed-use developments, it's really going to enhance the quality of the environment under that bridge. And the more that we can convert some of that underutilized space into really attractive, nice pedestrian spaces, hopefully have some catalytic development that's nearby with some retail or entertainment uses, it's going to just enliven the space. And nothing provides a safer environment more than being around other people. And it's those eyes on the street. And some of those other projects that are coming online are really going to help make this a much more welcoming and comfortable space for people to be in.
Thank you, Mark. Jennifer, the next question is for you. With regard to the north-south corridor planning, where can advocates look for examples of communities in which BRT has met and created transit demand while also spurring development? Do you have any examples for advocates to look at?
So that's where I'll have to get back to Julia Suprak for exact examples. I mean, we know that bus rapid transit in Los Angeles, in Dallas, in Chicago, in all of the major metropolitan cities have been extremely successful because of some of the flexibility it allows also, as opposed to light rail. But let me respond back from Julia as far as some examples that would really be critical. I do know that Cincinnati is also one that is fantastic. And I don't know, Jim just came on with his camera. I don't know if he's got a thought or if he was just flipping on and off. So.
And Tom Underwood, thank you, Tom. He added Austin. So there might be another example. Thank you, Tom.
If I could add to the conversation quickly. As you probably are aware, Jennifer, the 2018 study did look at BRT as an option early on, and found that the capacity and the ridership would exceed capacities for BRT. That's why the light rail line, we followed through on that as being the primary mode in that corridor. So hopefully, that work is just refined a little bit through what you're doing. And it would be nice to see that work that's being done as part of this study actually work towards the project development piece that needs to be done to go after those federal funds that we need to pursue in the region to even build this project. So as you are aware, and probably many people in the audience, there is a project development piece that has to occur before you can even go in and start applying for any of those federal funds. So had we been able to kick something like this off earlier, we'd be really well positioned to go after these funds right now, where now we're gonna have to wait like 15 months or so before we can really start doing what we need to do to make something happen in that north side, south side corridor.
True, but the good news is, Jim, we're seeing the federal funding is moving out also. So, I celebrate the fact that we are moving forward with this, and absolutely are looking, at areas where we can accelerate in order to pursue that funding.
No, absolutely. The funding's over a 5-year period of time. We've really doubled it on the local side, on the what we would receive as a state and as a region, about doubled it. And there's a lot more expanded and new programs that we could go after for funding. So we do have a little bit of time before the guidelines and the rules are all put out. My point is we shouldn't get in our own way sometimes, like we often do in St. Louis, and start moving ahead on some things so that we can kind of strike when the iron's hot.
Absolutely.
So going back to some of that, there's a question out there of what would the local match look like for a project like the north side, south side?
So I'll start, and then Jim, if you've got any additional insight. So obviously it's a cost benefit ratio, right? And so I believe that the maximum still is 80-20, but if the local match, so it would be 80% federal, 20% local match. But if we came in at a lower percentage or more even, where, it's 50-50 or something like that, then that cost benefit ratio improves. And so it helps you in the selection of that funding.
Jim, did you want to add anything?
No, I agree with Jennifer, but transit rarely gets funded at 80%.
Right. Yes.
And, we
can be optimistic.
Right. All the scenarios we worked were closer to 60-40 or 50-50 to really give us an opportunity to compete on the federal level. So, it's the cost benefit piece of it. They also like to see that you have skin in the game. Another thing that we need to be cognizant of and try to work around is this loop trolley issue. And if that's not resolved in a way that FTA finds beneficial to everyone, it really could hurt our chances of getting future federal funds.
Thank you, Jim. That was one of the questions that was just added to the Q&A. What are the plans moving forward to remain competitive for future lines, whether it is light rail or BRT, given what we have seen in the news about the loop trolley?
I'm looking to Jim because I can't, speak to that necessarily.
You're looking for an answer on that other than what I just said.
So we need to demonstrate that it's beneficial to the region. That is the answer.
Right, absolutely. And there are checks against us if we can't keep this project going and or if we have to repay those funds. So even if it's one sponsor for that project, they look at it on a regional basis. So.
Great, thank you. So there is a question about North County areas such as the city of Pine Lawn. How can they be a part of this project?
So that's absolutely one of the things that the county has asked us, is to not just look at, okay, who's touching the line, right? It's part of that outreach is really looking at the whole of the North County area and that connectivity. And so that was part of, how I had talked about like our targeted engagement and that community outreach and making sure that we are meeting the needs and what the expectations are outside of just, a small area. And that is certainly one of the things that St. Louis County has really asked us to focus on is that connection.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jennifer.
Mhm.
So Pat, we're going to jump back to you. I think you have some technical info about the speed of the light rail extension
Sure.
to Mid-America
Yeah.
Airport.
Yeah, so good question. So the train will operate up to 55 miles an hour at that particular location. I think the question, part of the question was also revolving around, the single track is half of the extension. Like Rita Road in particular is in the bridge over Metrolink is being set up so that if we need to transition to a double track all the way out to the airport, we can do that. So we are thinking ahead on that. The project is being designed to have 10-minute gaps between trains. Okay. Now, what Metro ends up operating it at, we're not sure yet. They're still working through that as it relates to the overall system integration and operations, but we'll be able to accommodate up to as short as 10 minutes in between trains. And we also have a storage track at the end of the alignment, right? So that it helps with operations as well. So there's your answers. So
Thank you. This next question is directed to all of our panelists, and I think it's really important as we talk about these really impactful projects for the St. Louis region as a whole. Can you talk about representation and equity? It is important to remember who we are building for and what their life experience is. How are you ensuring your projects include diverse representation and reaching out to those most impacted?
Sure, I'll take a stab at it on ours. So great question, right? We all need to keep in mind our end users, right? And so a few things. So one, as it relates to the actual construction and the design of our project, we have very high disadvantaged business enterprise, minority business goals project overall, and we're going to actually exceed those goals. Another thing that we are doing, Gonzalez Companies has a mentoring program. And the mentoring program is aimed at disadvantaged students from freshmen and sophomores in high school all the way through sophomores in college. And we have a mentoring program, and Ken Sharkey and the Transit District have been great about supporting this program. And the idea is that we are bringing members of the community into this project, and not just this project, but other projects to provide exposure to higher earning wages, right? And higher earning jobs for their careers. And it's been a big success, and we're going to continue that throughout the entire project, right? So again, the whole concept here is, let's remember who we're serving here in the community, and let's make sure that they have opportunities to participate, not only as business owners, but also as community members. So that's what we're doing on our end. Thanks,
Pat. Mark or Jennifer?
Yeah, I'd be happy to share a few things. Just like Pat had mentioned about the contracting, Greater Greenway has utilized a similar approach to dividing projects into smaller bid packages in order to give more opportunities for smaller and DBE firms the opportunities to bid. On the consulting side, we just held a couple of mixers last week for again, DB firms to look at partnering with other prime consultants to expand those opportunities for design work on the professional services side. And then from the very beginning of Brickline, in fact, all of Greenway's projects, we do a lot of civic engagement to ensure that we are listening to the community. We've got a program called Ask, Align, and Act, where we really want to hear from the community before we design or draw anything. What are your concerns? What are your opportunities? And we're not in the business of telling people what they want, what they should have in their neighborhoods. We have employed an Artist of Color Council also to help advise us on incorporating community art and other programs like that. We've got a project that I didn't share here with respect to the Mill Creek Valley portion of Brickline Greenway, from the new MLS Stadium at 20th Street and Market all the way to Harris Stowe State University, where we've got a really, really interesting civic art program that is going to commemorate the neighborhood, the Mill Creek Valley neighborhood that was in this location that was destroyed in the 1950s and 60s. So it's a little bit different in every neighborhood and every project that we go through. But on Brickline, this has been a central part of our process from the very beginning, is holding working groups, and we've had over 200 community meetings. It's been a challenge during the pandemic, but people have responded really, really well.
Thank you, Mark. I think it's really interesting to see how we have to start thinking outside the box on community engagement, especially during a pandemic, but people still want to come to the table and want to participate and make sure it's what their neighborhood wants and needs. So thanks, Mark. Jennifer, did you want to add anything?
Yes, it's very similar to what Pat and Mark have talked about. The city, the county, AECom, we are very focused on providing opportunities for minority-owned businesses, disadvantaged businesses. And our team is the part of the team that has been part of the 2018 study and the 2008 study. And so, continuing, it's critical to AECom, the city and the county, to allow for that progression and the development of skills with these, some of the minority-owned or disadvantaged businesses, which we've been able to do through these projects. And then just with the community outreach, some of the things we're still negotiating with the county on how we're proceeding. But just like you said, Kim, we've had to be really creative, right? And so looking at, digital or web outreach, which allows folks to participate and provide their input outside of just a scheduled time, right? But then also recognizing in some of these disadvantaged areas, they don't have access to broadband or to the internet or the web. And so really doing a door-to-door outreach, working with the communities and the community groups for engagement and feedback is absolutely critical for us too.
Thank you. So we are a little bit over, but I have one final question for all of our panel. What do you believe is the key takeaway from each of you to our audience of what you will believe will be the greatest impact of your projects that you are working on for the region? And what do you need from riders, stakeholders, and others to ensure the success of your projects?
Okay, I'm going to go first. I say that because the fact that we have changed the conversation with this project with North Side, South Side, and it is a city, county, by state approach is amazing. And I just think this is such a noteworthy project that will improve mobility across the bi-state region, but it's really one of the first projects where we've seen focused on transit, city and county coming together and really being part of that conversation and driving our message. What we need is, just like Jim had said, we need to move this forward, right? We need the input, we need the support, we need the thoughtfulness from the community on what is going to work for you. And how can we help to advance this as quickly as we can so that we can be aligned for for federal funding, but then also for development. So it's the two part. It's that investment, that private investment also.
Thank you.
Thanks for letting me go first.
There was no choice.
Yeah.
Well,
Mark?
go ahead, Mark.
I was just going to say partnerships and collaboration at all levels. We can't develop or deliver a successful project without partnerships, and that goes from community members, residents, to other agencies like Metro and Modot, to city agencies and the private development community as well. We need to be collaborating and coordinating all of our efforts together, again, to ensure that we're seeking the same the goals, and that our tactics in getting there are aligned and our schedules are aligned. We're leveraging other resources and things like that. I also wanted to mention Modot is now kicking off a pedestrian environmental linkages study for I-64 between Kings Highway and Jefferson. And so this will be overlapping the same location as Metrolink, same location as Brickline Greenway. And, you know, we're all serving the same community. We're all serving the same user base and same residents. And so in as much as our agencies can collaborate with each other and partner, we can, you know, deliver what the community really needs and what the community really wants.
Thank you, Mark.
So on our end of things for the Sinclair County Metrolink Extension, you know, partnerships with private developers, right, and private investment funds. And so, as I mentioned earlier, you know, we relocated the existing or the alignment from 1999, right? And that was an example of us trying to set the area up such that private investment, private dollars will come into the area, right? And we'll be able to use that. And so it kind of goes hand in hand with what we're developing here. So that Metrolink extension is going to be part of the economic engine in that area. That's a big deal. Boeing and other developers are putting a lot of money and investing a lot of money out there, and there's going to be a lot of jobs out there. And so when you get back to who are we really serving in the community, right, for transit, there are a lot of jobs that will be created in that area around the Metrolink extension out here and with private development. And so we need to provide easy access for our users to get there, quite frankly. And this project will do very much that. So I think just working at a larger level, kind of what Jim Wild had mentioned earlier, which is looking at the big picture and making sure that we're working with private development as well. And that partnership, I think, is a big deal. And then also, just as we mentioned earlier, community engagement, making sure we are in touch with the community that we're serving. And those are the items in my mind that are significant to our particular project.
Thank you, Kat. So I want to thank all of you today. This is really a great way to start 2022, is to talk about the exciting projects that are underway or about to get underway in our region, or even about to break ground. I don't think many people know that light rail is about to break ground on that project in Illinois. So it's really exciting to start 2022 with the future of transit in our region. And I appreciate your time this morning and all of the information you have provided. I want to let our audience know that this is being recorded and will be available to be shared later on this afternoon. Give us a couple hours to get it downloaded and on the website, but it will be there as a resource for all of you who attended today if you want to share this conversation with others. And we will be back. We do quarterly Talking Transit events. We will be back with updates on these projects as well as on our social media channel. So please follow us there. If you have any suggestions for a future Talking Transit event, feel free to reach out to us, send us an email, but we appreciate your time today. There is more information about upcoming events on our website at cmt-stl.org. And I say this every time, if you're not a member of Citizens for Modern Transit, we really hope that you'll consider joining us to help continue this conversation in the St. Louis region. Thank you, everyone, and make it a great day.